is a brand new 2017 Harley Davidson Street Glide with ABS. We plan on putting our 14-inch assault bars, and we're going to use all the stock cables and wires. Everything's going to be completely stock, including the grips. Before you start your install, make sure that your ignition switch is off and remains off the whole time. You want to make sure the fuel line is also off. If you leave this on and you start unplugging everything, it's going to trick the computer into thinking there's a bunch of errors. So make sure to always leave this off and leave your fuel off. The first step we always do is take off the seat. Okay, the next step is taking off the tank. Now normally we take off the bolt that's there on the other side, and then you're going to take off the 2 bolts here, and then after you're going to unplug it. So basically you're going to unplug the wires there, and you're going to take off the lines. Then after you're going to pull off the plug there. After everything is unplugged and unscrewed, you can now take off the tank. Makes things easier so you don't have to worry about scratching it. Plus you're going to have to access the wires here to get to the ABS. The next step is to take off this cover here underneath the fairing. Now you're going to need to unscrew it from both sides, and then there's 2 plugs underneath. After you take it off, you'll notice the 2 clips, and you need to unclip them there. The next step is to take off the turn signal. So you're going to unscrew it from the top and bottom, and then you're going to unplug it from the back. You're going to repeat the same thing on the other side. The next step is taking off the 7 bolts to get off the fairing cover. Now there's 3 up here you're going to unscrew and take off, and then there's going to be 4 in the back. 1 underneath the mirror and 1 right here. Now there's 2 on the other side also. After you've taken it off, you can then unclip the headlight. Now the next step, be careful because you don't want the windshield to fall. So make sure you remove that carefully. Next step is taking out the front cover underneath the fairing. So you just unscrew both sides and you pull the panel off. And now we're going to show you how we take out the fairing.
First we remove the wires from up here to this clip.
Sometimes they're a little harder and you might have to use something to unclip them, something to pry them.
We'll start down, you have to remove the antenna. There's a little button on the bottom right there. And we'll come over to this big one. There's a button right here. You push down, that slides. And then there's another black plug right here where there's a button on the bottom. Then you have to remove the control wires, little buttons on the tops. And another one over here. And you gotta remove this one too, which has a button on the bottom also. The ground could leave, just leave alone. You pop this one off, the fairing.
And you're just using a plastic pry tool.
There's another one right here, you pry off. And this is a fly-by wire that you disconnect. And everything that you have to disconnect to release the front there.
Now keep in mind, if you don't remember where anything's at, sometimes they recommend that you can either number them or label them so that you remember. Okay, so the next step, we're going to take off the complete fairing. Now there's 2 bolts right here on each side. You're going to unscrew those, and then you're going to tilt it at 45 degrees and pull up. Now he's gonna tilt that to 45 degree, and then you just pull it up. Here's a better view at the handlebar without the fairing on. The stock bar is 1 inch, and I believe the height on this thing is 7 inches, the rise. Here's just a little tip for you guys. We always recommend having a lot of tables and blankets handy, because as you're working, the more tables and blankets, it's real easy when you're pulling stuff out. You can just lay it on there and you don't have to worry about anything getting scratched. The next step we're going to show you guys, we're going to remove this panel here, and we're going to remove the plugs that are right here. We're going to put the plugs on the other side over here so that we don't have to extend the wires. It gives us a lot of extra wire here. So Jesse's going to show you guys how he does it.
So first you have to pry this off with a plastic pry tool. Disconnect that. Pull the turn signal wires in so they don't get tugged. Then there's 2 plastic screw clips below here. Hard to see. Get the screwdriver in there. Untwist them off. And then it pulls out. Sometimes you have to pry on it a little bit as you screw out. You can see there. The screw came out and the plastic part comes off. That's what you're getting out. And this goes together like this. As it screws in, it tightens it up. So you can see how to get it out. And there's one more over here. This one's usually easy to get off. Get the screw out. That comes out. Now this whole panel will slide forward and pull out and expose the wires that we need to get to. And you can use your plastic pry tool to get under the edge and pop these out. And now we have a few zip ties to cut. Carefully cut that zip tie. And carefully cut that zip tie. And now relocate these wires. This direction. And get some tape. Tape them off. Just for a layer of protection. And then when you reinstall this panel, these clip into these little holes, like so, and it falls down in place. And you just push these in, and you just put the screws back in.
And you can see how much wire he's gained now by putting them on this side.
There you have it. No more wire extensions.
Okay, so the next step we're going to show you guys is us cutting all the zip ties that hold all the lines here. Now make sure to be real careful that you don't cut any lines or any wires when you're doing this.
Alright, now we're going to show you how to relocate the hydraulic lines so you can run the 14. The first thing I do is I protect these wires so they don't scratch your fender. And now we're going to move all the electrical wires out of the way for now. We don't need them at the moment. And this harness we can run under the brake line. Get out of the way. This is the ABS connection that we have to slide down, and then you could unplug it. And now you can see this is where all the brake lines and clutch line is. There's a tab right here you push to release it and pull out. And we're going to remove the clutch line on the bottom. Remove the brake line that's on the top. And the clutch line is going to run on the top now. So you could pull the clutch cable snug on the frame and plug it into the top now. And then that unit goes down in the hole and clips back in. And that's all you have to do for the clutch side. The brake side's the more tricky part. So now, remove these wires out of the way again. We're gonna have to remove this clip up like that, which removes this whole connection. And we'll just pull all the wires out right there to give us some room. And then this panel unclips. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove this brake line from here, and we're going to put it on the back side. So we're going to move this line, move that one to the top, and move the clutch to the back, the brake to the back. So now when we install it, we're going to run this brake line through the electrical housing to give us more room. So to do that, we're going to have to cut these 2 inches out of the plastic. You could use a little knife to clean it up. Now this panel could go back on. Just so you can see the new slot we put. To protect the brake line from any friction, we're just gonna run some tape around it. It won't move in there, but it's better to be safe than sorry. And you can just slide it in there. And you can see that's why we located it to the back side instead of the top. So now it could just clip in there just like that. So now the brake line runs across the top, and you can see all the extra line we got now.
Now here's an optional step for you guys. It's basically to make your lines look cleaner. We use brake cleaner to clean up all the numbers, and we cut off all the tags off this so that when you put your new bars on, you won't see any of this stuff.
On the clutch line, you want to take about 6 inches off of this. Use a little knife to get it started, and then you can just pull it off. Because that's how much is visible with the new handlebar. With the brake cleaner, just get the rag wet. And you can just wipe it on the lines, and then removes all the lettering and glue. So it looks nice.
So before we put on our new handlebars, this line here is not vertical. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna loosen it up and we're gonna make it vertical. You can see the angle of it.
And you just want to barely crack it loose. Just enough where you can slide it, but not make an air leak. And then tighten it back up. That way you don't have to re-bleed the system.
And you're gonna repeat the same thing to the other side. So before we put on our new handlebars, this line here is not vertical. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna loosen it up and we're gonna make it vertical. So you can see the angle of it.
And you just want to barely crack it loose. Just enough where you can slide it, but not make an air leak. And then tighten it back up. That way you don't have to re-bleed the system.
And you're gonna repeat the same thing to the other side. So the next step, we're gonna take off the controls, we're gonna take off the housing, and then we're gonna remove the handlebar. Now what we do is zip tie them to the chassis right here, so they're not in your way and they won't fall over or leak. Now we're taking off the grip on the left side. Now it's glued on, so you got to use like the plastic pry tool. And basically you're going to want to just slide it in there to get the glue loose. Now for this install on a street glide, we're going to use our 14-inch chrome assault bar. Now, one thing we recommend is that before you do your install, when you get our package, to always make sure and open it and make sure you got the correct handlebar and make sure it's the correct finish. We mark them on the boxes here too, but don't just go by that. Make sure you open your bar and always double check it before you start an install. Now the chrome bars always come bubble wrapped, so they're really secure. Now we always recommend not to use a knife or any tools when opening this, because if you use a knife, you could scratch the handlebars. So we just make sure to take your time and undo the bubble wrap correctly and take everything off patiently. So what you want to do is we always leave the plastic on, and we leave this on here to protect the points, but we rip it here so that when we're doing the wire install, when we're wiring the bars, we make sure we don't scratch it or anything like that, and then we'll take it off after we're done. So now we're ready to wire it.
Alright, now we're going to install your wires in your handlebar. The first thing we're going to do is remove the wires from the housings. So the easiest way to do that is to pull it out of it first, to get to that point, and then use a pick to push down and pull out like that. And we do the same thing over here on this side. You pull it out of the housing and use a pick to push down and pull out. Make sure you don't damage or rip any of this out because there is no fixing it. Just be very careful with these. And set these aside. On the throttle side, it's the harder side. It's the one with the 2 wires. So you have to run all these wires through on the throttle side. On the other side, it's just the single wire. So on this side, all I do is remove this tag so it doesn't get stuck in the handlebar. And this one can get pulled through just like that. Over here, on this side, you have to disassemble it all. So you can remove this tag. You could use a safety pin. This is a pretty big one. And what it does is you go down. If you hold this horizontal, go down to the 45 into the top hole and then pick up. And that releases it to slide out. Same thing here. You can see there's 4 and there's 4 small holes on top. So you could go in at a 45. And you can kind of feel it and it releases it. And I'm pulling on the wire just slightly. So when it releases it, it pulls it out. And then on this side, we leave the fly-by-wire one alone, and we remove this one. Which remove the backing, and then inside it's just the same. You can't really see it, but there's another hole on the top, and the same technique. Remove that one. For a reference, when you put these plugs back on, with the button side facing up on all the plugs, it goes white with black stripe, white with red stripe, solid black, solid red, white with gray stripe on the single plug. On the heater plug, it goes solid black and then solid white. On the throttle side, when we tape the wires together to pull them through, you're going to want to cut the zip tie so it doesn't cause any complications when pulling the wires through. Now you're going to want to tape them just behind the fly-by-wire connector. Now we have joined the 2 wires together, ready to run the wire on the handlebar. This is what I use to pull the wires to the handlebar. It's a Westinghouse ceiling fan chain tied into a piece of weed whacking cord. So the first thing I do is I run the chain in, and it falls into place. And you just lift it up, just give it a little shake. Until it comes out. And just pull it through. And I made the cord just long enough to go from here to here. This is the most important part. You want to make sure you tape it really good, because if you pull this through, you have to start all over again. So what I do is I start up here, and then I work my way back. And on the back side, as you can see, is I actually fold this over, tape it, and fold this over and tape it. And you'll see that in a second. That way it has a nice small surface to pull through, but still nice and tight to not let go. Now that we have it all connected, you're going to want to put some grease just on this big connection so it can flow in the handlebar really nice. And you can add just a little bit, not too much, on these other cables. You don't have to get too crazy with grease. So the first step in pulling these through is you get the control wire and you backfeed it into the handlebar. And you pull it out of the hole. Then you feed the whole thing inside. Once when you get the connection joint past there, you could pull this one through. And this is the easiest way to get these two wires around like that. Now you could pull on this cable as you push to feed the wires in. Once you get it right there, You're gonna want to use a rag because it's all looped up. And grab it and pull it. And as you can see, that's where they connect. Now we could remove all the tape. These are the control housing. Here's your fly-by-wire. When we come back over here, you're going to pull these a little bit so they're not all the way in the hole. And you're going to push this cable in as you pull here to get this in there. And a little trick is put a little grease on the O-ring so it slides in easy. It pushes right in, and then caulk it so it fits in the keys. And wipe the grease off. And that's the hard side. The other side, you don't have to just take apart the clips. And the reason why is you can run it backwards so it's easier to run. So first, I tape off these wires so you have room to run the wires. And then I feed it backwards from the bottom. Now you want to take the white side, not the black side, to the cord. This side's not as critical, so I only feed it back once. On this side, you don't have to loop up. It slides right through. So now we're ready to put the connector back together. You just push them in. Same thing here. You push them in and you put the backing back on. Make sure they don't pull out. And the handlebar's ready to install.
The next step is we're going to install the handlebar on the bike. It always comes in handy to leave all the bolts and the tools next to you while you're doing the install so that you can easily access everything you need.
You just snug it up for now to check the fitment. Make sure you have it at the right angle. And now's a good time to finish unwrapping. With no scissors, no knives, just rip the tape and remove the wrap. Plastic actually has a seam right here that if you get it started, it just rips open. That way you have no way of scratching the chrome or black if it's powder coated.
I'm going to show you the difference from the old bar. You know, a lot of people don't just upgrade to a Factory 47 bar just for the looks. A lot of people, if you look at the bar, this is an original bar. It's 1 inch diameter. You know, it's a lot smaller, a lot more flimsy. But if you look at the factory bar, it's 1.5 inch diameter, so it's a lot stronger. The quality is a lot better. All your controls are still going to fit. We taper them too, so they're strong on the top. And the way we design the bottom is they go 1 inch to mount to your stock risers, to 1.25 inches to clear your fairing, and then they flare out to the 1.5 inches. Now you can always tell Factory 47 bar by the badge on the bottom right corner. Okay, so next what we do is we turn the bike fully to the left, and now we're going to zip tie the cables. Now by turning it to the left, it puts the most stress on them so that we know that by the time we zip tie them on, we're going to have enough clearance when we put everything back together.
I use the upper holes on the top.
We're zip tying the clutch first. Next, we're going to zip tie the brake line. Next thing we're going to do is trial fit the bearings. You want to always trial fit your bearing on first, because after you're done with your install, you want to make sure everything clears.
You could connect them at this point.
And you put it on the same way you take it off. Basically at the 45-degree angle, push down, and then you're able to tilt it upwards. So you can see the clearance right here once it's on. Now from there's also something else you can do. You can also put the seat back on the bike. You can put the seat back on the bike and sit where your hands want to be adjusted. So this way you know it's going to fit you better. So we got the handlebar where we want it. Now you always want to make sure you have clearance in between the fairing because the vibration, you don't want anything to rub. But after you're done, you can just tilt the fairing back at this point. You can see the riser clamp there, and basically just tighten everything down.
Now that the handlebar is tight, you can pull it back just a little bit more. So we got to run these control wires in the handlebar. Now for the 14-inch, you're gonna have to push the left side clip into the handlebar, and then the throttle side just goes butt up against it. So first we push this one in. And now that it's in there, this has to barely go in there. Then you can push these sides up against it. Give you a little bit more room, we move the fairing forward. And sometimes you have to push the gray one in, the single wire, into the handlebar. You have enough wire here. At this point, you can zip tie these wires together so they're secure. And reinstall it. Now you can reconnect the control housings by plugging them in. And running the wire and the channel that you pulled them out of. And just twist it in place. And reclip it and then turn it. Plug it in. Run it in the channel. Put it up, flip it, and turn it.
Next step is to glue back on your grip. We're using super glue. Now it all depends on what kind of grip too. But if you're using stock grips, we recommend you definitely glue them on. Now we're going to install the housings again. You don't want to tighten them too tight, you want to leave them just a little bit snug, but so you can rotate them so that after you're done you can adjust everything and install the top cap back on.
This side just slides on, has a teeth. Same thing on this side, you want to leave it loose, not too tight right now.
You always want to make sure your grips just slide on. They should slide on real easy. These are stock Harley grips, so they work perfectly. But sometimes if you get a grip that's a little too tight, it could be the aftermarket grip that they made it a little too small in the hole. So just make sure it slides on before you try installing it.
When we finish installing it, you don't want it locked up like that. You're gonna want to slide it so it has some side play in it. That's why we leave this loose for now.
Next step, we're going to install the clutch and brake lever again.
Again, leave it all loose for now. You do a final tightening at the very end.
So now we're going to reinstall everything back on the bike. The install's pretty much complete other than putting everything back on. But one thing we do recommend, just because it's so convenient, is to clean your bike first. You know, if you see, this is a brand new 17 bike, and if you can see here, it's just got a real dirty. So you can see even here, see the top of the motor, how dirty it's gotten, and with the tank off and the seat off, it's real easy to just clean it, wipe it down. So yeah, your bike's nice and clean underneath too.
First step is put the top bolts in on both sides. Lower panel goes on under all the wires. Clips in place. And the two side bolts go in. Now you could plug in your turn signals, push it in the hole, slide it on, tighten it up.
Next, we're gonna put the harness back together. Now we're gonna install the front fairing cover and the front headlight. First, put the windshield. Next, you're gonna wanna plug in the headlight. Now we're gonna put in the 4 bolts that go in the back. Final steps are we're gonna put the tank back on. Make sure to re-zip tie the hose line on the bottom. Now you can reinstall your seat. Now for the final step of the install, you want to make sure to adjust your controls to where you're comfortable, where they're easy to reach. Tighten everything down, and now your install's complete. Now just a little rundown of the bar, like I said earlier. It's 1.5 inch diameter, and you can see we tapered it here so that it clears the reservoir real nice and easy. The way we bent the bottom so that it has a really nice clearance on the top. You can see the bend there. Now also in there, like I mentioned earlier, it goes 1.25 inches. This way you don't have to modify the fairing or cut anything out. Any bigger than that and you really have to cut the fairing. Plus, we make them wide enough so that you can still open your glove box there. Now another thing, with the 14 inch, you definitely clear the mirrors, you can see there. Now on the 12 inch, you still will clear, but on the 10 inch, you definitely won't clear. Your hands are gonna be right in the center of the mirror. So we always recommend about 12 to 14 inch. Now another way to tell 14 inch is by looking at the peak of the bar. The peak is exactly even with the peak of the windshield on a stock windshield. So just a little reference if you're deciding which bar you wanna get. The most popular bar we sell here is a 14 inch.